Hey everyone, welcome back to another laptop review after a long time. Now this is the Asus Zenbook Flip 14 OLED. This is targeted towards business professionals and people who use their laptops on the go and mostly use it for light tasks but for a long period of time, and all together putting it together in a premium package, that is the Zenbook lineup in general for Asus. Not to mention the specification of this particular laptop will be mentioned down in the description, so do check it out, and the current pricing of this laptop will also be down in the description. And if you do purchase anything from that link down below, it will be helping the channel at no extra cost to you. So I'm really excited to cover this particular laptop, so without any further delay, let's check that out. I want to start with the highlight of this particular laptop, which is going to be the display. Now this is a 2.8K OLED display which is Pantone validated, goes up to 550 nits, which is plenty bright, and also has 90 Hz refresh rate. Now I don't know, this seems like kind of the best display you might get in terms of resolution, sharpness, color accuracy. I have used a lot of laptops in this particular price range, around 70,000 to 1,10,000, and most of them have really good hardware, a good thin and light form factor as well, but actually skimp on the display quality. This was the case with all of my laptop reviews prior to this, but this one is excellent in terms of quality, in terms of resolution, in terms of color reproduction, not to mention the brightness, and the cherry on top, a 90 Hz refresh rate for some nerdy people like me. The experience of using this display for content consumption has been A+. Even when you watch movies at 21:9 aspect ratio, it won't be a problem because it's OLED and the pixels just turned off. Now all these benefits of OLED come down to this particular laptop, which is an excellent thumbs up from my end. Not to mention you can use a lot of nice wallpapers like this one I have over here. Also, this is a touchscreen and you can have a pen input with it, which is sweet. Not to mention Asus bundles the pen inside the box and gives you 3 extra tips, apart from the one which is pre-installed over here, and a tip changer as well. They made it very nicely in terms of the cylindrical design and it fits very well in the hand. It has programmable buttons which you can change from the Windows settings as well. You don't need a third-party software for that, and conceal the USB-C port in a very nice way. Also, because it is a touchscreen and it is a flip, so you have the articulating display and you can just turn it around in any orientation you want and work as a tablet in tent mode, or even prop it up for watching movies very close up without the hindrance of the keyboard, which is a really great experience, as you can see over here. Another thing that enhances your media experience is going to be the speakers. The speakers are really good on this laptop, especially the stereo separation, the treble clarity, and the maximum volume. What I was surprised is that there were no vents or tweeters on the top of the laptop. I was surprised to find that this only has bottom firing speakers and then also tend to sound so good. What it does lack is absolutely bass, which is kind of the trend with most Windows laptops as well. Comes a bit shy compared to my MacBook Air M1 maybe. That's something to take away, but the maximum volume is higher. Now let's talk about the build and design. I absolutely love it because it's mostly made out of metal, the whole chassis, and every part you can actually touch, barring the touchpad, the keyboard, and the display. The display is made out of glass, the keyboard obviously based out of some polycarbonate material, and there is a glass trackpad as well. Apart from that, it's all aluminium and mostly magnesium alloy, which is great. Also, they can keep the weight down with a 63 watt-hour battery as well at around 1.42 kgs, so it's below 1.5 kgs, which is a great deal for a 14-inch form factor, which is 16:10 aspect ratio. This build quality and the display actually contributes to the premiumness and the premium feeling of this particular laptop, which enhances your experience as a whole for whatever you're doing on this particular laptop, be it watching movies, doing some productivity related work, or anything like that. Not to mention, this display is also Pantone validated, so you can do it for some color sensitive work as well if your particular application supports it. But if you do some tweaking around with some raw images or something, it can easily handle it and it might be useful in those particular scenarios. So this is me recording from the webcam of the Asus Zenbook Flip 14 OLED. Let me know how it is. It is definitely a 720p webcam. Comment down below and let me know how the mic quality is. I know that my skin tone and the white balance is a bit off, especially when you compare to the footage I'm actually recording over here at the same lighting conditions. But yeah, this is kind of one of the nicest lighting conditions you might have, apart from the bulb up there, which is kind of blowing out the highlights. So let me know how the AI noise cancellation is in Asus laptops, which I have enabled for this particular webcam sample. Coming to the I/O and ports, I really appreciated that this has a full-size HDMI port. Not to mention it has two Thunderbolt 4 ports as well, which are really great. On the right hand side, you actually have a USB-A port and a headphone microphone combination jack, not to mention a micro SD slot. So I have a setup over here with a Thunderbolt enabled monitor as well, which has wireless peripherals. With a plug of a cable, it just works seamlessly. And by the way, if you're interested in this particular setup and how it works and the review of its individual components, let me know down in the comments down below. One thing I would have appreciated about the port selection over here is that this has two Thunderbolt ports, which is great, but I would have preferred it having one on each side because both these ports can charge the laptop apart from any other work you might do in terms of having a desk setup as well. So the flexibility of having things plugged in on two sides would be something I would have personally preferred. Next, about the charging solution, you actually get a 100-watt charger, which is great. It is very compact and can actually replace your daily carry in my opinion. I would love to have this as my daily carry charger because it has a very long cable as well. Not to mention it supports PD charging, so if you have all your devices supporting PD charging which is below 100 watts, this is the charger which could be your one-stop solution. Laptop as well supports PD charging, so I have tried it with my Centurion charger, which supports a max of 120 watts but has a peak output via one port at 200 watts. It was charging at around 96 to 98 watts on this particular laptop. Now the next thing is going to be about the battery life. So for example, I had set it on whisper mode, which consumes the least amount of power in terms of the SoC. The display was turned up at 2.8K resolution, around 70 to 80% of brightness for most of my usage and bit of low brightness usage as well. Also had the refresh rate turned on to 90 Hz with HDR on in Windows settings as well. So typically this is what your display would actually consume a lot of power given at this resolution, brightness and refresh rate, and that's what I typically saw as well. And while keeping this display setting, I did all light tasks like web browsing, Microsoft Word, Excel, etc. And I got around 4.5 to 5 hours of screen on time typically. Now this is where you have to decide what do you need more. Would you like to enjoy the crispness and whatever that this particular display offers to you, or would you prefer a longer battery life? Turning out the refresh rate did not extend the battery life as much as I expected. It went up by another 20 to 30 minutes max. But I believe that turning down HDR and turning down the resolution to probably 1080p scaled properly to this particular form factor would help you in extending the battery life. So if you're getting a laptop and you are spending a lot of time away from the charger, I would recommend you to tweak these settings around in the first few days and understand what suits your purpose best. So I wish that the battery life was a bit more, but I can understand apart from the SoC, the display and its resolution, refresh rate actually consumes a lot of power. Given that this is a 63 watt-hour battery, it is respectable battery life, but I have seen better battery life from other laptops. Now to two of the most important hardware things which I believe in a laptop, which is the keyboard and the trackpad. This keyboard is a delight to use. I absolutely loved using this particular keyboard because the tactile feeling, the slight bump at the end of the key travel, and how it is laid out on this whole laptop chassis is really good. Because of the 16:10 aspect ratio, it is a bit of a tall chassis as well. A problem I have with other thin and lights is that I don't have enough place to put my palms down on the chassis because they kind of scratch around the wrist area a lot because the edge is over there. But this, I could easily fit my palms in and type comfortably over here. Typing experience was really good. Backlighting is evenly done and really good. One thing I would have preferred is that if the caps lock had a different color, because the backlight kind of bleeds into the caps lock indicator and it just gets brighter when you hit caps lock. So if it was a different color, it would have been a more obvious thing. Apart from that, you have the power button on the top right, which actually doubles as a fingerprint sensor as well. And this is a bit of a different kind of a fingerprint sensor, which I prefer in thin and lights. You can actually register for Windows Hello authentication via fingerprint on this particular sensor. And when you hit the power button to boot up your laptop, it will cache your fingerprint and use it when the Windows lock screen comes up and log you in one go. You don't have to touch it again like MacBooks and log you in on the lock screen. So that's fantastic to have, and I can almost let go of the absence of facial recognition on this particular laptop, although it has very thin bezels and kind of could not be accommodated most probably. But this is a fantastic thing to have, and it's a very small thing, but I think it should be appreciated more, and more laptops should adopt this kind of fingerprint authentication. Coming to the trackpad, it is really good. Compared to the older Zenbook 14 I used, this is taller, again thanks to the taller aspect ratio and the chassis increasing in height. Because of that, this is a glass surface, very good in terms of tracking and in terms of click response. One small thing I noticed about the build, chassis and the trackpad is that when I flex the chassis a little bit, it actually registers as a click. Now I'll try to display it in the B-roll over here, so maybe if it is audible or not. And even it happens when I'm carrying the laptop with one hand, and if I just do a bit of a jerk motion like this. So I reached out to Asus and they said this is a sample specific problem. So it should not happen in the retail units especially, and they checked with their units and it did not show the same thing that I'm facing here. But if your unit has it, do get it checked at the earliest. So overall the keyboard and trackpad experience is excellent. Not to mention over here you get the additional numpad which you can call upon on the trackpad itself. Because of the chassis size, you don't really have space for a physical numpad, and this does the work really well. You can have it on track when you want and tap in numbers when you want, and it works seamlessly. It did not hinder my experience or work at all while I was doing them simultaneously while keeping the numpad on. Now finally about the performance. Now few things, again the specification, this has a Intel i5 12500H. This has 16 GB of RAM, and if I'm correct, this cannot be upgraded because they are soldered on the motherboard, and most thin and lights nowadays actually have soldered RAM as well. It has Wi-Fi 6, which is great in terms of connectivity, and it has an extremely fast SSD. Look at the read and write speeds over here. I absolutely loved it. It's a very good quality SSD, and it is a PCIe Gen 4 SSD as well, which is a big thumbs up from my end. This does not have a dedicated GPU, and you wouldn't expect one in this particular thin and light chassis as well, but it has integrated graphics which has impressed me in the past, which is the Intel Iris Xe graphics. So let's start with that. You can see over here the 3D Mark scores are really impressive. I've seen similar scores and better stability with frame rate as well in previous laptops with the same kind of integrated graphics, and it's great to see. You can do some light gaming. I did not do it on this particular laptop, but in other laptops with such graphics I have actually played Valorant, and it goes up to almost 90 FPS, which is great. If this turns out 90 FPS, you have the advantage of a 90 Hz OLED screen as well with excellent pixel response time. So esports title is a possibility given that you tweak around with your settings a bit. Also, this is a 2.8K display, so make sure you turn it down to 1080p because I'm talking with reference to that. In terms of GPU performance, I have no complaints and it does really well. This has a 12-core CPU with 4 performance core and 8 efficiency cores. That's how the new SoC layout is going to happen for Intel for a while. And this is kind of a hybrid structure which is supposed to use performance cores when it is stressed high and it is required, and efficiency cores for handling light threaded tasks and can sip on power. But unfortunately, things that I have observed did not really add up. But again, this is not because of Asus. This is seen in other laptops as well with having similar kind of SoCs. What is happening is that Windows, while assigning tasks, is not doing it well enough to play around with the CPU, and sometimes when you're doing light threaded tasks, even your P cores are activated and they're eating through either power and your battery life as well. So hopefully later on a few updates and BIOS updates make it better, but as of now that's what it is. Now what I did was, it has 3 major modes in the My Asus app in terms of power profiles. So here is what I saw in terms of the temperatures. So the performance mode is the peak mode where you can push it to its limit, and for this particular test I was using Cinebench R23 with a multi-core thread because it has so many cores and threads on this particular SoC, and that's what I do on other laptops as well. So you can see it's kind of playing around with the thermal threshold of this particular SoC. One thing I would definitely commend Asus about is the thermal solution, because yes, the fans ramp up in performance mode, but the surface temperatures never really crossed around 41-42 degrees. And that too, the surface temperature was 40 degrees at a point which you will not interact with the laptop while using it in generally. I would still not recommend using it on your lap if you do. And the keyboard remains pretty normal and very comfortable to touch even at this highest performance. Next, you can see the CPU frequencies actually, and this is a trend which I have noticed in most other laptops as well. I would always recommend using the standard mode. The temperature to CPU clock speed to the efficiency part and the battery drain, the standard does it best, even if you're doing high load tasks. And that's something I would like to stress on and mostly ask you to use. But if you absolutely need to push it to the wall, then do go to performance mode, although that ramps up the fans a lot. And you can see over here the surface temperatures as well as the fan speeds. I will just compare it with my mouse click so you have a kind of an idea about how loud the fans are. In terms of power consumption, you can see that this particular CPU consumes very decent amount of power, under 40 watts, which is pretty good in my opinion. The whisper mode goes below 15 watts at times as well, which is very good. And the good part about the whisper mode on this particular laptop is that if you're doing web browsing, Microsoft Word, Excel, Notepad, or any similar kind of workloads, it has no impact on your performance and your experience of using these particular things. I faced no jitters, stutters, or any loading times, lags, or anything like that while even using it on the whisper mode. So that's about it about the Asus Zenbook 14 Flip OLED. I hope you liked this particular video and it clarified your doubts. If you have more doubts, do comment down below and let me know about them. I will try to clarify it as much as possible. And if you like this particular video, make sure to drop a like. And if you're interested in buying this particular laptop, I would appreciate if you buy it from the links down below. And hopefully there'll be more laptop reviews on the channel to come. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.